it's difficult, right? I think I think that most people that I talk to these days are really struggling with that if they're at all attuned to what's going on in the news. And it's really hard, and it does take hard work to stay positive. And I've had to do it myself. Especially now because of social media and 24-hour news coverage on both a lot of cable stations, 24-hour news coverage. We're bombarded constantly with news. You turn on Facebook or any other social media, and there's breaking news, and a lot of the news is repetitive. That they just keep repeating the same story over and over again, and we need to keep in mind that those stations very often run on ratings, and they get the best ratings when they cover the most terrible news. So, not to say, right? Not to say that those things aren't really happening in the world, and it's really important to stay aware. I'm kind of a news junkie myself, and I like to be aware of what's happening in the news. But, I've become really aware that the news is repeated over and over again, and I know that there are really good things going on in the world as well. And they don't really cover those, or when they do, people fall asleep or walk away from the TV. So, but the problem is that when we get that constant overload of negative information, we go into the stress response. We constantly feel like we're under attack, and we develop what's called compassion fatigue, where, we hear about some terrible event, and the first time we hear it, we feel really compassionate and really care about the victims of this terrible happening. And over time, we become numb to it, and we become emotionally numb in general and start to feel real stressed out. We start having the stress reaction, which is the fight or flight reaction, where producing all the stress hormones like cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, those fight or flight, where we think we're in danger, and we have to produce those chemicals to be able to fight off the danger or run from it. But there's nothing to run from in this situation, and there's nothing to fight. We're sitting in our living room listening to the news, right? And it's constant. So after a while, that's going to have a really negative effect on our mood and on our health. Constantly being in the stress reaction leads to depression and anxiety, and then a host of physical problems that come along with that. So how do we deal with that? So one thing, the first tip that I gave is feel what you feel. So we can't avoid feeling pain if we feel sad or we feel angry about something that's in the news. We don't like what's going on in this country or in the world, or it's really important to accept that that's what we feel, that we feel those negative feelings, because if we try to numb ourselves from the feelings, the human brain cannot distinguish which emotions we're going to numb. So we can't numb negative emotions and still feel really intense positive emotions, or really, they're going to start to fade to a numb level as well. And I've seen that with people that I work with who have PTSD, that a lot of my the veterans who come to me to talk about it are numb, emotionally numb. They can't feel positive because they have numbed themselves to the negative. So it's important to know what we're feeling, and eventually those feelings, if we are aware of them and accept them, they do pass. They're not permanent. It's when we try to block them that they stick around. So the second tip is to take a bad news break. So don't listen to the bad news all the time, right? turn off the TV, get off of social media, do something positive, or look for positive news. Look for things in the news that you can feel grateful for. Have some balance. And there are things that are positive going on in the world. There are good people who really care and are helping other people. The third tip is to be grateful for those positives in the world and in our own lives. So gratitude is extremely powerful, and there's been a lot of research on having an attitude of gratitude, as Oprah Winfrey has called it. But there was Dr. Emmons who did research in this area and found that that people who spent some time every single day focusing on what they're grateful for, even if it's small things like the sun came out today or I ate something really delicious, all the way up to really big things like family and friends and some wonderful thing that happened in our lives. But spending time every day doing that actually has tremendous benefit on our mood and on our health. And he recommended that you have to cultivate this attitude of gratitude. So writing down 3 to 5 things every day, or saying aloud 3 to 5 things every day. So that focuses our attention on it. By writing it or speaking it, can increase that attitude of gratitude and increase our mood. Number 4 was to surround ourselves with positive people that we can talk about our feelings with. So developing relationships with positive people who we know we can talk about how we feel, the sadness that we feel or the anger that we feel, and we're not going to be attacked for it. So I know, in that same vein, to avoid having debates with people who know are going to attack you personally if you disagree. So that just adds a whole new layer of stress. I know on social media, that is constant. People attack each other, and so I would, if you have those people on your social media, I would block them, because it's not healthy. That's not a healthy debate. You can disagree, but attacking each other is just adding more stress and anger. And then spend some time relaxing. Do something like meditation is extremely powerful to ameliorate that stress reaction that I talked about before, focusing on our breathing, listening to really relaxing music, getting outside in nature, doing something that helps us to feel in the relaxation response rather than the stress response. So that's a very real thing. The relaxation response is actually a biological experience that is opposite to that fight or flight that I talked about earlier. Even getting a massage, and everybody loves to talk about yoga. I've had a lot of yoga people on my radio show, and yoga is another way of bringing about that relaxation response. And similarly, the next tip, which is exercise, is a way to detoxify from those stress hormones that I talked about earlier, that we release, the cortisol, norepinephrine, and epinephrine. So exercising regularly can actually get rid of those stress hormones from our body and keep us from getting sick from them, and put us in a better mood and give us a better perspective. 7 is eating well and sleeping well. We know those are really important, and they help us to be more resilient to stress and to prevent disease. Laughing regularly is number 8. So make it a point to laugh every day. And, some people will say, well, if things are so bad, how can I laugh? And actually, well, we know that, the funniest people are those people that joke about these really sad and terrible events or stressful events. We laugh the hardest at those people because we know, because deep, in an unconscious level, we know that that is what helps to break that cycle of stress, to even joke about the negative things. And laughter, there's been all kinds of research about how laughter helps to improve our mood and also boost our immune system. So, for example, there was a famous book, Anatomy of an Illness, by Norman Cousins, who wrote for, I think it was the Saturday Evening Review, and he had a very painful disease, ankylosing spondylitis, and was told at that time that there was nothing that the doctors could do for him. And he had a movie projector and would play reel-to-reel films of the Marx Brothers and the Three Stooges. And he would get himself laughing, like belly laughing, for hours. And what he discovered was that for every half hour of belly laughing, he had 2 hours of pain-free sleep. And eventually he ended up going into complete remission. And that's when doctors started taking the humor as a cure for illness very seriously, because they had never seen that before. So, but it has the same effect on our mood. I'm sure everybody has had that experience where you laugh about something and suddenly you feel lighter and less upset about what you might have been upset about before. And number 9 is practicing realistic optimism. So realistic optimism is not having rose-colored glasses, which, I've sometimes been accused of, but it's knowing that there are really stressful things going on in your life and in the world and on the news, and, and accepting that, but knowing that we also have the coping resources to deal with it. And this will help us to then have the energy and the creativity to then be able to move forward and maybe become part of the solution, getting involved and doing something to change what's going on in the news, which brings me to number 10, which is finding meaning. So finding meaning in our own lives helps us to not feel depressed about what's going on in at all in our own lives, in the world. And so getting involved in being part of the solution is, rather than sitting at home and getting upset about what's going on in the news. So if you aren't happy with what's going on in politics, then make it a point to vote, not just in the big elections, but in the small elections, because our local representatives are the ones who represent us on the larger scale. So, and they help us within our own communities, which is really important. And if that's important to you, then also help other people to register to vote and volunteer for a cause that you feel strongly about. Get involved in a political cause or in helping people who are hungry or who are out of work and down on their luck. Get involved in helping them. So, if you feel like the world is getting meaner, then be the opposite of that. Be kinder. And just by doing that, it helps us to be more resilient in dealing with what's going on in the world. And, by helping it make a better place for others, it helps it to make a better place for us, because, The research has shown that one of the best antidotes to depression is helping another person. So, and Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist who was in the concentration camps during the Holocaust, as a prisoner, not as a psychiatrist, but he had already been He had already been a psychiatrist, so he was observing what was going on there, and ended up, when he was liberated from concentration camps, he ended up making that his therapy. He called it logotherapy, where he helped people to find meaning in their lives, no matter how bad it was, because he saw that the prisoners of the concentration camp who did the best, who were the most resilient to this horrific situation, were the ones who helped their fellow prisoners. And so when they got out, they were the ones who were able to go on with their lives and lead happier lives, because they had created meaning right there in like the worst of the worst situations. So if they can do it, we all can do it.
Personally, I don't find it hard to stay positive in the news cycle, because I pay attention to the way headlines are written and how 99% of them are basically a form of clickbait, and how the quality of headlines has dramatically fallen, especially in the past 5 years. And honestly, for me, I look at other things. I try to avoid a lot of the sensationalist headlines, because, for the simple fact that more often than not, leads are buried, and journalism integrity has been compromised. Because instead of finding the truth, more often than not, journalists are in the business of, if it bleeds, physically or metaphorically speaking, it leads. So that's the reason why headlines are structured the way they are now, more often than not. And that is a sad state of journalistic writing practices, especially in the United States. And that's rather disappointing.
Hello, Meryl. I listened to your post, and I thought it had some things in it that were pretty interesting and might be helpful to others. But one of the things, I guess, that kind of struck me kind of toward the end, up toward 8, 9, and 10 of your suggestions, is that you came up with 10 ideas that would be good for doing that to help relieve stress and whatever, is that there are none of the things that you brought up had anything to do about trusting God and having a relationship with God and having that faith and being able to have that relationship and that strength to tap into and know that everything's is going to be okay or could be okay. And the other thing is that you had 10 ideas, like the 10 Commandments. And the 10 Commandments have been part of God's letter of love to us, which is the Bible. In those 10 Commandments, all those years ago, when Moses got them from the Lord at that time. And you know what? And from then to now, everything that's there has never changed. It's never changed. And with the 10 ideas that you have out here today, I just kind of wonder, in even 50 years, are they going to still be applicable? There you go. Because anything that man creates always changes. Back when Bill Clinton was president was when the whole term political correctness came out, and that term has changed so much. Like, it's changed so much, it's almost sickening to me. It's stuff like that makes me feel stressed out. Whereas all this other stuff going on, and no matter what happens in the world, I know that I'm going to be okay, like no matter what. Because even if I died today, I would be ready for that. I know what's coming in my life, and I have peace of mind of knowing that, my Heavenly Father loves me, and that I'm going to be part of His kingdom, and I know people probably think, oh, that's just hideous or whatever like that. Well, I mean, to each their own. Some of the stuff that people bring up today and want part of society and want me to participate in is just as hard to swallow at times, and stuff like that. But everyone, is able to talk about everything they want to talk about and put out the ideas that they have to put out. But anything that has to do with Christianity, isn't. You even mentioned yoga, which I really enjoy yoga, but that's actually kind of based on, a type of meditation or whatever like that. And, God doesn't even get a spot on the list of 10 anymore, whereas He's the one who created all 10 in the beginning. And I find that the people that I meet in churches and in any kind of religious type or God-believing group of people or whatever, they all have peace of mind. That's one thing that they all have in common. And the world today, I think, is upset in general because when they think they have it all down and they have it all figured out of how it goes, then it's time to change the rules again. I know that for me, being blind, I've grew up with people labeling blind people as being blind and then handicapped and then special and special needs and all of those names that they come up with, because they all later, after years going by, all take on a negative connotation, so they have to figure out something else, and it doesn't bother me. Call me whatever you want to call me, just as long as as long as people have the right attitude, then that's all that really matters. But if you call me the right name but have a negative attitude behind it, what good does it do to call me the right name? So I don't know if I said all this right or whatever. It's just that I just think that God should at least make the list. And I know that for me, I have a very low stress tolerance. Aside from my blindness, I literally take no other medicines, and I'm 53 years old. I don't take anything for stress. I tend to be very stable and confident, and have peace of mind and all of that, and tend to be kind of a rock to a lot of those who are around me, and people can't figure out why. And I'm like, well, it's because I have God in my life, and I'm if I don't and I just have to give Him the glory or the praise for that, because a lot of other people around me certainly do not. And that's most of the time when I start trying to unwrap that and figure out why, what's different between me and them, it's because I have God in my life and they don't. So people can take it, use it, throw it away, whatever, but it's just out here for anyone to hear and to know that this is an option as well. So, He just wants people to love Him and want Him in their life and stuff like that. And it's amazing the things that can happen when you include Him.
I feel like a lot of people are just positive because it's just forced. It's fake positivity. It's not genuine positivity. It's fake. Because when you are really feeling positive, you're going to know that it's real. Most people, I feel like, are very happy-go-lucky because they want to hide their emotions, they want to hide how they're feeling, so they try to suppress how they really feel by putting up a facade that everything's great, everything's good, everything's wonderful. And that's not good, because when you bottle up your emotions like that, it's like a soda effect. You know, sometimes when you shake the bottle of soda, and every time you shake it, it's like you're putting up a facade. Oh, everything's great, everything's great, everything's great. Then you try to fill more into the bottle, and you try to shake it, and shake it, and shake it, and shake it, and shake it. Then you try to open the bottle, and soda, you know how soda is. Soda's very bubbly. You open the bottle while it's still bubbling and fizzing, and the soda explodes everywhere. And that explosion of soda is basically your feelings exploding and just seeping out. And when that happens, you're lashing out, because you cannot keep things bottled up inside. Because when it comes out, it comes out. You cannot hold anymore. And eventually, when a little bit comes out, everything comes out. Because it's not going to be just a little bit that pops out. It's going to be pretty much the entire bottle that pops out. And if you keep things bottled up just to put on a positive front, just to please people, you're going to end up even more miserable and worse off than when you started. So, for those people on this app that think I'm just a sourpuss, and that I'm so negative, and that I'm such a pessimist, and that I have a negative attitude, hey, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to keep stuff bottled up inside. No way. This guy will not be exploding, or imploding, as it were. You know why? Because I keep it real. And if that means being a pessimist more than optimist, then so be it.
Dude, come on. There are people who are happy, and they're not hiding or covering up stuff. They're happy despite problems, because everybody has problems, whether they're physical or financial or family or fucking whatever. But some people just choose to not let those problems overtake their lives. And some of that, when people do let them overtake their lives, it's a disease. It's a illness. It can be helped, can be treated, but it is not normal for people to be sad or angry or upset all the time. That's not the normal state of things. The normal state of things is to find good in where you are. And yeah, you deal with your problems, but you deal with them at appropriate times. And some people, like me, I'm a very positive person. I'm positive shit's going to happen. No, but I'm also a very realistic person. So I don't get excited about something I don't think is going to come to pass. I don't, I'm not a very outgoing kind of person that, oohs and ahs over things either. That doesn't mean I'm negative. It just means that that's not my nature to do that. But man, not everybody is sad and hurt and angry all the time. That is not normal.
Well, hello, this is Cass answering the question. I don't know whether it's hard or not to stay positive because I'm sure there are good things happening. It's just that the media chooses to expose what's not good, especially the worst of all things. They choose to put that out there for everyone else to know, as if we don't already know that already, but they want to make sure that we never forget about these horrible things that are out there. As far as trying to stay positive, just, I guess, remind yourself that, you know, you're still alive and you're still able to run the errands that you have to go do, and, like, you still have a job or something and a place to rest yourself at night and the ability to cook your own meals and stuff like that and dress yourself and take yourself wherever you want to go without much assistance, I suppose. Some of the things, and you have your friends and your family and or significant other that you can possibly try and stay positive about. I don't know, you have your other outlets on how to let out stress and things like that. I stopped watching the news too closely. Back in 2014, I surrendered the news because there was something horrible that happened and I just couldn't stand watching it anymore, and I just stopped. I was at my first training center for the blind in Boston and I just gave up the news. And then when I went to another training center ran by the National Federation of the Blind this time, I definitely didn't watch the news. And I was in Minnesota doing training, and I definitely surrendered the news. I don't necessarily watch the news, but I definitely find it still in my social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook and sometimes Instagram and things like that. There's really no way to avoid it, especially with people coming to tell you. I know it's not a good idea not to watch the news. You have to be aware of your surroundings. But honestly, a lot of the stuff that's happening is just catastrophic. And I just can't stand it. Very rarely I'll hear about something good happening and I'd be like, oh, good. They actually broadcasted the good thing that happened on the news and not the bad things.
Hi, I know one thing I do, 'cause I get a little irritated when they have the repetition, but I understand that, maybe some people haven't seen it yet, or, they want more details on a story. But for me, it sounds a little flawed about the ratings, because I think, if, I know for me, I choose a station based on how thorough they are with their reporting. CBS happens to be my outlet of choice. But, I don't want to hear all those debates about political stuff. I mean, I want to hear interviews. I want to hear discussion, not debate. So that's why I stay away from CNN, because they tend to go into these long, drawn-out debates, and I just want to know what the top stories are, and I want to know, maybe if you interview a political correspondent or, something, that's okay. But going back and forth on views, you get two people together and, different sides, and they go back and forth. I mean, some people like that, but I don't. But anyway, I know what I do to kind of keep my spirits up is I try to look on the bright side of things, in general. If that doesn't really work, then I like to put on some comedy, or, that's what's nice about apps, the services like Pandora or Spotify, is you can type in a comedian and listen to recordings of their comedy stuff. So that's what I like to do, or just watch a movie, like a kids movie or something that puts me in a good mood, because I'm sort of like a news junkie. I like to keep up with what's going on around me. And part of it is for conversational reasons, and part of it's so that I'm in the know. So that's something that I like to do, and that's what I do to keep my spirits up. And I think it is important to know what's going on around you. But some people don't know how to do that. And I guess those are the people that choose not to watch the news. I guess I don't like not knowing things. Like if someone says, "Did you hear about, that so and so died?" Or, you know, it makes me feel a little bit disconcerted if I don't know. Like, no, I didn't hear about that. So I try to at least get a little bit of the news every day if I can. Some days, I get busy and I'm not able to, but there's a service for the blind. It's called NFB Newsline. It's through the National Federation of the Blind. And I like to use that service to read newspapers and magazines, news magazines and stuff. So I can just learn about, it keeps me in touch with the world and so that I don't isolate myself. So even though the news is bad, sometimes I still like to get into it.
The real problem with the news is news has become sensationalized. News has become get people in an uproar, keep them watching, get them purchasing media through newspaper, whatever. Our news system is so flawed and so broken. It's insane. The problem is nowadays there's no more news. It's all a bunch of commentators, and there's a difference between a commentator and a journalist. All the journalists are now putting their opinions in with the news, and they're not reporting all the news. They're only reporting the parts of the news that get people hyped up. I truly believe, and no one can tell me any different at this time, that the news media organization as a whole the news media organization as a whole is totally responsible for our whole racial divide, our whole political divide. The news media is dividing our country, and they are profiting from it. That's the sick and sad part. I view probably 90+% of news media as sick and disgusting, anti-American. Nowadays everybody wants to be Oprah, but in a negative spin. The news media, I have to tell you, they're the most despicable. It's the most despicable, dishonest business there ever was, and the proof is right on television. If you hear what they're saying and then you research the facts, it's rarely ever the same. When I was a kid, we had news broadcasters. Okay, and they could have left parts out or whatever too, but you know what? They weren't putting their own opinion. They weren't planting seeds into the viewer. And there also was a time, I don't know how old you are, but the saying in news journalism was, get it first, but first get it right. Nowadays, they will report rumors as fact. I mean, if my daughter said, I want to be a journalist, I would say, you know what, can't you just be a serial killer? They're that despicable to me. But anyway, yeah, the news media can fix itself, but there's no incentive to, because they need to keep the money flowing. They need to keep people up in an uproar. That's what it's all about. It used to be, I heard it on the news, and you would think, oh man, that must be true. Now you hear, I heard it on the news, for what that's worth. You guys have discredited yourself. The news media as a whole should be ashamed of itself. And more and more and more people are seeing it every day with all the half-cocked, half-informational, sensationalized, with a whole spin on their reporting. So, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.